Good, I see. Thank you. Okay, so first thing on the agenda is roll call. On Zoom is Lee and Dan, and in person is Belle, Megan, Ben, and myself. And I'm expecting our other two people to be here tonight, but that's okay. So we can get started. The second thing on the agenda, and I'm going to turn this over to Belle, is we have had a conversation with our town manager, with Sophie, and we are going to propose an environment committee restructure. This was not anything that was not unexpected. When we started this a couple years ago, we were expecting that it would morph and it would switch and it would organically grow. And I've been approached with a kind of a new way of looking at this environment committee. And I'm going to turn this over to Belle because I think it's a good move. So why don't you tell us what we talked about with Sophie, and that'll be fine.
Sure. So when we started this 2 years ago, 18 years ago,
yeah, we're on our third year now.
We did not have an environmental services coordinator. We had we had a counselor who was very eager that Orono considered environmental concerns when making policy, but really no room on staff's plate in order to support kind of that those efforts. By having the environment committee and getting an excellent application from Megan, and support from council, we now have an environmental services coordinator. So suddenly we have staff support for doing a lot of the efforts that we thought that the environment committee might do, like writing grant proposals, writing an environmental comp plan, helping coordinate a climate action planning process, et cetera. So now, and council has become more aware of kind of the environmental impacts of different policies and what we'd like to do is position many of the decisions that they're making as fiscally and environmentally sustainable. So the proposal on board, and this has been Sophie, we've talked with Sophie about it, and we've also talked with the council chair. So he's also aware of it and supportive of it, is that the environment committee is no longer an ad hoc community member committee, but becomes a more formal council ad hoc committee. So it will become part of, like, all the comp plan implementation is an ad hoc.
Right.
So if it's not in the ordinances, it's considered an ad hoc. But it's one of those that it would become on Monday nights. It would be a standing committee, and it would be a committee of the whole. So all council members would sit on this environment committee. And when important issues came forward to be discussed, such as recycling, the solid waste ordinance, climate action planning, grant applications, those would go to that council meeting to be considered kind of through the lens of the environment committee. Because we've had the conversations. It's not like we're not talking about our recycling policy. It's not like we're not talking about climate action planning, but oftentimes it's either going through community development or finance and operations, and kind of changes the lens through which you look at it. Right. By creating an environment committee, council would be kind of throwing their weight behind the idea that considering environmental concerns as part of policy is important and needs to be part of the ongoing future of the council. This committee, Cheryl was a huge driving force behind starting it. And I presume that Cheryl doesn't want to be on council forever and ever.
I do.
So what we're trying to do is by establishing it as part of the more formal process of council, that it lasts beyond, that it would be a legacy beyond Cheryl's participation, or whether or not Sophie and I are still here, or however that was. So that's how the environment committee would work. So that would transition to council. However, we have a valuable group of residents who have been on this journey with us and have so much information that we would still like to be able to extract from you.
And expertise.
Right.
Right.
That we would like to kind of convert it to more of a staff advisory board. We'd no longer be recording and posting the meetings, because it would be simply a staff advisory meeting. We are kind of anticipating that there would be at least 2 standard meetings per year, and possibly more if this advisory committee feels it's necessary. Oh, I didn't want to interrupt. No. So that that way, and the first standard meeting would be pre-budget. So that would be kind of it would be a meeting and a time for this committee to talk with Megan about, Megan might have, these are our priorities, and the advisory committee would weigh in on the proposed priorities, but also on some new considerations. Have you thought of X? Have you considered Y? So that would, we would do that prior to the budget so that we can include them in the budget for council to discuss. And then the other standing meeting would be kind of halfway through the year, and a check-in on how are things going, or should there be any adjustment within the parameters that council has given us for budget, any considerations that we should be looking at and preparing for the following year. Now, just because we're proposing 2 standing meetings does not mean that Megan won't say, I need input on something, I need my environment committee to weigh in, and then kind of send out an email and be like, hey, who would be available for an impromptu meeting? And because it's a staff advisory committee, we don't have to have public notice. We can call them as people are available.
So a comparison, so the proposal to switch from a council ad hoc committee to a staff advisory committee, and I think it was the tree board that Sophie made a comparison to. So we have boards in our municipality that do a lot of advising, expert boards that do advising to council, to staff, when we have issues that have to happen. And I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the closest that this might be would be the tree board.
Tree board, or like the trails committee.
The trails committee is another one, right? The trails committee, things like that. So we want to keep everybody together. We just want to switch it. We want to switch it to be more of operations for this committee to weigh in operations, especially during budget time. So Megan or Val would chair. I'm not sure who would chair.
Megan would
I will
chair,
step down. I will step down as chair. I'd like to still be maybe a liaison to council if that's, you know, however we organize that,
I think you would become a resident expert.
or a resident, or resident something, I don't know about expert, but I would be there somewhere. Because it's important to me, and I just want to say, I appreciate this group of people, Ben, and I mean, it's nice to have the land trust weigh in also on some things that, you know, especially if we are looking at some environmental things that they have a lot more knowledge about, or they've been working with for a long time, conservation issues or vernal pools or something, you know, something that will come up in discussion. So that's in a nutshell. Do any of you have any questions? I don't know what the timeline is or what the process is to restructure us.
So I think, so my understanding is that Sophie wanted us to have a conversation here first.
Right.
So that it doesn't go onto a council agenda before, before we talk about it. And then I think that she was planning on February.
I have it.
7th.
Yeah.
And if not that, then, a committee meeting within, February.
Right, it's not on our committee's agenda on Monday, so it will be February sometime.
And then, the other piece of it would be, kind of the hope that in February, at some point, whether it's, this exact time or a different time that works better for people, I don't know, but that we could have a conversation kind of on that priority setting, meeting. We have a, energy assessment of some of the buildings that we kind of like to review with, the committee. Because it has some suggestions in order and for things to do, and we'd like to get some feedback on what people think is the right approach to take. There's another round of the community resilience grants. Did I get the name right?
Yeah.
So there's another round of those in March, so we'd like to kind of prepare some thoughts and ideas for that. So that's kind of the timeline, is that council would formalize the transition to a council committee made of council members. And we would have our pre-budget meeting in February is the thought. So we are presenting this, but it's not a fait accompli. We'd like to hear feedback from people and what they think, and thoughts about how it might work.
Any idea, any thoughts, Ben? I'll start here, but I know, Dan, I can see you thinking, but you just hold off on a second.
I mean, it sounds reasonable, just to kind of clarify nuts and bolts. So 2 standing meetings, advising, which could be a meeting, could be a phone call, an email, depending on what the topic situation is. Is there anything, because I don't, the whole switching to a council advisor, on the semantics, I guess, or whatever, does that mean that there's expectations of us for presenting to the council at all, attending meetings, or is there?
No, so you would be no longer appointed by the council to be on this committee. So in order to be on the committee, council had to appoint you guys.
Which
So
I did.
that would no longer have to happen. So if, say, for example, we had something that Megan was presenting to council at committee, and she was asking for some support at that meeting, maybe.
Okay.
But it certainly wouldn't be like you gotta show up every time that occurs.
Okay, just want to make sure that's.
It would be less responsibility, not more.
Okay, that's what it sounded like, but just wanted to make sure and clarify. And more just so pre-budget, we would get some information from the town of priorities, decisions, and then.
And feedback, we'll be looking for your feedback. What do you think about this as residents, but also as environmental, you know, experts, kind of.
The basics sound reasonable to me, but I'd like to hear from others, I guess.
What do you think, Dan?
I think that if this creates like an environmental kind of like theme within the council itself, I think it's great. It's a good move. And personally, you know, I'm always available. You got my phone number, you know where I live.
Yeah.
You got my email. You can contact me whenever. It doesn't. I'm not so bothered about it being so formal anyway. I like, you know, I'll donate my time as needed. So I'm good with it. As long as you know, Belle and Cheryl and Megan, as long as you think it's the right thing to do for the kind of future of the town council, then I think it's good.
Good. I think that when we started, our initial charge was to do a lot of the work that Megan is doing now. So, so we actually supported that position, an environmental specialist coordinator position. Did I get it right? Is that what it is?
Services coordinator.
Services, okay. Once I get her title right. Anyway, we supported that position by just our intention, just the intention of having a conversation about climate change and, you know, electric chargers and energy audits and things like that, that didn't necessarily have a place on council. And so for the last couple of years, bringing this to council's attention has really generated oversight that we just didn't have two years ago. It was there. I mean, Orono and Sophie in particular they're very environmentally aware, but to actually have a special place for that conversation. And now that we have that, now that I always thought that this committee was going to evolve into something, and that this is how it's evolving, and I'm happy to support it, as long as it continues, and I think it will. I mean, there's just a lot of issues that are coming down the pike, and especially with climate change and electricity and, you know, getting off fossil fuels and all of the things that are just front and center right now. PFAS is huge in the state legislature right now. I don't know what Orono, you know, our wastewater treatment plant is working with, you know, doing some things with PFAS. So I think it's a good place to be, but I don't want to lose you guys. So, you know, and then as an advisory board, I don't know what we would call it, but as an advisory board, like we have the Trails Committee, like we have the Tree Board, like we have all kinds of other things, I think that's a good place for it personally. So, and to be the best that we can be for the town of Orono is really important to me as well. So that's kind of where I stand. So did that nutshell it enough? Does anyone else have any other thoughts? Sonia, do you want to weigh in on this at all, or Lee?
Yeah, I love the idea. I think it will benefit the town council as a whole to be able to be sort of digging into environmental issues in a little bit more depth on a regular basis by making this sort of part of that committee's structure. So I'm supportive of it and also hopeful that all of the expertise in this group can continue to be part of how the thing functions going forward.
Great. How about Julie? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when I joined this committee, I sort of assumed that at some point this was going to become a little bit more formal, and it's good that it's now getting to the point. Like, we basically did the trial run and figured out what worked, what didn't, what kind of conversations needed to look like, and how much time it was going to take and all that stuff. And I think it's great that we're getting to be more of a formal thing inside the town government. So.
Yeah, good. So next steps would be to bring it to council when
So-
we can?
Yep, so the
Okay.
next step will be, council will discuss it, but then, we'll send out an email about scheduling the first advisory meeting, and include some information in that, like our, energy assessment,
Are
report.
we gonna talk about that tonight at all? Or just an update?
I think we'll just provide, like, the report has come back, we're reviewing it, and we'd like to look at it in more detail.
Okay.
As an advisory committee. So, stay tuned for an email.
All right, and I didn't ask, I just made an assumption that you were all willing to do this. So, I mean, if at any time you go, I don't want to do this, just, let us know. And also, something else that we discussed only kind of briefly, or with Sophie is, if there's anyone else, I know I talked to, Jean McCrae, a little bit at the, window dressers, who thought she might want to participate. So if there's other people who have who are kind of stakeholders or would like to be part of this, we are open to inviting other environmental specialists on campus or to be part of an advisory group. So that's another thought as well, so.
And because it's a much more informal board or committee, you can come when you're interested and just send an email and say, I'm not
Not
interested.
gonna make it.
And,
That's
because we don't have to have a quorum or anything like that.
Right,
So,
right. Okay, good, we'll bring it to council. The third thing on the agenda is updates. So we've got climate action, the Orono Energy Efficiency Fair, and the energy audit.
so the climate action plan, I wanted to make sure I provided you all with the link to the report. We have the vulnerability assessment, and I think this will also be on our advisory agenda, because there's some we'll want to discuss how we would position Orono to kind of make some of the, I don't want to say moves or suggestions or whatever, but to kind of take advantage of the fact that we've had this vulnerability assessment done and position us to improve our position for future. We have started phase 2. And phase 2 will have there's going to be a lot more public outreach. So I would encourage all of you to, we'll send out the invites to public meetings and all that, and I encourage all of you to participate if you can. And then that will come back with a lot more of the, okay, Orono, here are the levers you can pull in order to reduce your greenhouse gases. So we now have our greenhouse gas emissions as part of our vulnerability assessment. And then as part of phase 2, it would be actions you can take to lower your greenhouse gases. But we'd like to have you guys look at the reports and resources that are on this link ahead of time so that we can then discuss it. To see if there's anything that we need to do in order to pre-position for the phase 2 report. Orono Energy Efficiency Fair, I thought maybe I'd let Megan update on how that went.
Sure, that was back in October,
Yeah.
right? It feels like it's been a long time.
We didn't meet November or
Yeah.
December, so, yeah.
Yeah, so we had about 100 people come through. Which our goal was 80, so that was great. Yeah,
Gave away a lot of stuff.
yeah, we did. And the one thing that the vendors said that they really liked is that even though there was only 100 people that came in, they got a lot of one-on-one time with everybody who came in. So everyone every person who walked through the door sat and talked with each vendor for at least 10 to 15 minutes, they said, so they really reached the people they wanted to.
I think we heard from one vendor who said that he was moving forward with a couple of contacts from that, so.
Yeah.
Quality vendor experience is key if you want to keep it going, so that's.
Yeah. Attendance to presentations was a little low. Well, it depended on the presentation.
Did it depend on the time as well, as of the presentation, like, and I know, Dan, you were there, was the early morning presentation not as well attended, but was it because of, it was at 9?
The first one was actually one of the most attended.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I don't know if it was just too, we had spaced them all out, and so you weren't really gonna have people stay for the whole day. They were kind of just coming in, checking out the vendors and leaving, so they picked a time that they could come and listen to the one presentation that they were interested in. Is what I kind of found, but
Yeah, I think the other thing that happened was people came in and then sort of went into the tabling room and then just spent all their time in there, and it was kind of awkward. There wasn't really a way to make a big announcement and say the presentation is beginning, you know, like, and we I can't remember, did we hand out flyers? I don't think we did. So there was just the one board with the presentation times outside the presentation room. So once they were inside the tabling room, they maybe lost track of time and didn't know what time the presentations were. So I guess we could, one way to get around that would be to like give people like little postcards as they walk in,
Yeah.
the presentation times on it or something like that.
or like you said, even an announcement.
Yeah, and an announcement as well. Yeah.
Get a bullhorn, let's put that in the budget.
Yeah.
There's a presentation. But as far as the presentations themselves, did we kind of cover all of our bases, or was there something that maybe we should have had that we didn't, or something that we had that we didn't need? Content.
I thought, I was really grateful that the presenters put a lot of effort into their presentations. They were
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah,
So I think we had the bases covered pretty well. I didn't hear of anything that,
I didn't either.
and I had it also in the submittal form that people could reach out to me and say if they missed something. I didn't get a lot of feedback about that, but
Okay,
yeah, I don't know.
okay,
No, I agree. I thought that the presentations were excellent.
Mhm.
yeah,
It's just that, you know, when towards after the first couple, the presenters, I think, felt like they were getting more out of tabling because
Yes.
they're just, people weren't going next door. So I don't know how we could. I don't know how we could get around that. Again, the announcement and a little postcard. I don't think it would work to do it all in one big room so that everyone had to listen. I think that might be a little odd for the other organizations that are tabling.
right. Maybe when there's more, because these things have a tendency to grow. So maybe next year we have 200 people and there'll be more people in presentations and more people out milling. I mean, maybe it's just, we just need more people to come.
I think it's a combination of, we need more people, and also maybe we need to market the presentations kind of separately. It's like a whole
Right.
separate side thing that's going on in addition to the businesses tabling over there. And then maybe we'll get people turning up specifically for the presentations. But it was good, you know, despite it being, you know, 80 people. Oh, no, was it
Right.
100?
100.
You expected 80 and got 100, or was it the other way around?
Yeah.
It was good.
So,
Yeah.
moving forward, we're gonna have to try and figure out how much it would cost, because we wouldn't necessarily have a grant to
Right.
support it. Dan, I don't know if you've gotten bills that I haven't seen, but I still don't have a catering bill.
Well, that's good. If you don't have one, then everything's fine.
Um,
Hopefully neither of us have one.
And I mean, we've asked,
Yeah,
we have asked, they've
okay.
had a dining transition, as you know, so maybe they just have,
It's in the ethers.
yes, and I've asked once, I don't know that I'm gonna keep asking.
Yeah.
We
It's
will,
it's all good. You know, if they've charged me for the food, it's fine. I have a little you know, cushion in my budget. I can absorb that, so that's fine.
all right, but,
But you don't
You have
have
to know
to.
for grant reporting.
we'll
I know I
have to-
don't have to, but it will probably cost us more in like our actual time than than we would save by actually.
Which would be, if we end up having some grant funding left and we can use it to support another iteration of the fair, that would be great. We'll have to look at the grant goals, and how long we have to spend it
Yeah,
out.
or if you can roll over funds, maybe it could roll over into the food budget for another window build or something like that. Just maybe you could create a like a slush fund for environmental activities or something like that.
We don't have slush funds.
Yeah, that's a bad choice of words, but
Uh,
a fund,
Megan,
a very important, serious fund.
yeah, so Megan actually, is looking at, NEGEF, New England Grassroots Energy Environmental, something or other. Anyway, looking at making an application, when you spoke about, window dressers, making an application to this fund. They have supported other community builds in the past. And one of the things that we would like to put in this grant is, funding for an intern to, help with the measuring, the organizing, and then the being there for the build. Now, Dan, I know that oftentimes, well, most of the time you've had an AmeriCorps student and you didn't have one this year, and I didn't know if you knew if it was coming back or not.
There is another AmeriCorps program in the works. I don't know if it's going to be up and running in time for this year's window build, but I'm hoping that it will. I'm hoping that it will be. We'll see.
Well, and I think it makes sense in that case for us to put it in the application for doing, or put in this application, this intern, where our intent is to apply for the maximum, which is $4,000, and anything that's left after we have intern expenses, we would use for low income Orono residents to get free or even further reduced inserts. And if we spend less on an intern, then we have more for the windows.
On that note, since we did our window dressers, our build in October, would it make sense to move the energy fair? We also had a window dressers presentation, to move the energy fair to prior to our build. And like in September, when the vendors meet with people, did they have enough time in October to set things up for winter, heat pumps and things like that in October? So would it make sense to move it?
I don't think we're wedded to anything.
Yeah.
So,
I missed the fair. I was doing a hockey club thing with students, but is there an event either at the university or in the community that we think we could kind of couple those two? I'm thinking like a lot of what kind of like vendors, I know like would be like the Common Ground Fair, for example, like it's
right,
bringing attention. I know we don't have Common Ground Fair here, but is
right.
there something where
So
similar sort of
the town
group that might-
doesn't, and I would have concern, but maybe there would be space. Like if we tried to partner with Friends and Family Weekend or something like that, but I don't think you get Orono residents wanting to come onto campus for that.
No, yeah, it would be too much.
I'm just thinking like, is there events, either maybe there's something, maybe Dan would know more like at the university that this could be added on to or connected with, or really just an event that gets a lot of people out. I'm thinking like, thinking like something like the Arts of Palooza, for example, like
Yeah.
it's people, like they're not going saying, I want to do something for the environment necessarily, right? But it's community members out and about, learning about what's going on. Is there something that we could maybe couple this to try to get more people, whether it's on campus or we do it somewhere?
We can
And
look
I
at
think-
Ben, originally, when I had my AmeriCorps volunteer working out of my office, we would do an event identical to what we did. And so if I can get a volunteer back, so if this AmeriCorps program gets up and running again, and we can combine efforts, I think that we can, you know, having multiple people working on something dedicated to it, working on getting the word out, talking to businesses, talking to, you know, the public. I think it could be big enough to stand on its own. I don't think it necessarily needs to be connected with something else that's not energy efficiency related.
I guess I liked Ben's idea just for the fact of that this year, the demographic was well-established homeowners that were already knew that energy efficiency was important to them.
Right.
And they were coming in, learning specifically about a heat pump because they knew that they had the money, like the money that they could do it.
Right.
So I do like the idea of expanding to something like an Arts Palooza or something and reaching other demographics of people. Just because I don't know, if you're already environmentally conscious, are you gonna spend the time then to go to a fair that you already probably have a pretty good idea about? And with efficiency main being so big of what it is, I don't know, it might be unpopular
But there's a lot
opinion,
of
but-
people too that are looking for ways to save money. You know, like I want to put heat pumps in my house, but I don't want to spend $1 trillion. Can I go to this fair, see what it is? You know, and they'll come to my house and see if it's feasible, I mean, for free. So I think there's both. There's, I know what I want and I'm gonna find out about it. And then there's, I have no idea what I want and I don't have any money anyway, but I'm gonna find out about it. Because I know that I have to. You know, I know I have to save money, like window dressers is an example. I'm gonna put inserts in, that's what I've got money for. You know, so I'm gonna do that. So when we have a window dressers demonstration, which we've had, but our build was over already. We'd already done our build, right? We did our build
Yep.
before that, right? The week before that. Then those are the people that would go, we have a gamut, you know, a gambit of inserts to heat pumps to electric cars, right? We have that whole range. So I think we did it. We just had our build before the presentation. So we didn't reach the people that might need it.
You'll gain momentum and you'll.
Yes, and that's the other
Word
thing.
of mouth, I think
Word of mouth is
probably,
the name of it.
maybe handing out flyers at the farmer's market,
Yeah.
a couple weeks before might be helpful, rather than just putting the
Right.
posters up on the soggy, wet, barriers the day of.
Right.
But anyway, so I think we learned, a lot this year. I'd like to keep, particularly in the early days, if we have good quality attendees versus a huge quantity, I think keeps vendors coming back every year, and the better selection of vendors that you have,
Yeah,
the more interest that you'll get from people. And I also think that we can start getting vendors to share it with their networks as
Yeah.
well. Now that it's kind of a known quantity and not just a,
now that they saw how cool we are,
yeah.
they're.
Also,
wild.
and one more thing to consider is when we did it with the in the years past with our AmeriCorps volunteer leading the charge, we actually did a slightly different format. We actually went around signing up local townsfolk who would then come in and sit in a room and have a series of presentations. So then the vendors would come in and give like a 15-minute presentation. And then the next vendor would give a presentation, and the next and the next. And there would be, you know, like an hour or two of like intense presentations from all these different vendors. And the audience would be the public. So that could be another way of doing it as well.
And then did they table after that?
Sorry, what was that?
And then did they table after they did the presentations? Was the day, did they
Yeah, well,
spend
then there was
any
sort of
time?
like an informal gathering afterwards. Yeah. So you could approach the one that you were most interested in and just chat with them.
Right.
But maybe there could be like a nice balance between those two formats where it wasn't so focused on the tabling and not so focused on the presentation, but maybe a little bit of both.
Dan, when you did this analogous program before, what time of year was it? Was it associated with like Earth Day in the spring? Was it kind of where Orono did it this fall in the like lead up to winter? Well, do you recall? And do you think time of year makes a
I'd have to
difference?
go back and look. Give me a few minutes. I'll look through my files while you lot are chatting.
Sure. I'm just thinking about how much Earth Day programming and momentum there tends to be during that whole week on campus, and how that's potentially an opportunity, but I certainly see the value in doing it in the fall, in the lead up to winter as well.
Yeah.
Also,
Birthday's in
you don't
April.
have time
Right.
for
We
this
don't have
coming
time for
birthday to
April.
get it, to pull it off again.
Yeah.
One thing that I would, just in terms of programming, I guess vendors would do this too, is making sure we figure out a way to inform people about the new like federal tax credits and rebates that are coming out.
Yeah.
I find it kind of confusing, trying to figure out if I can get a rebate for an induction, so.
Yeah. We had
so those-
efficiency made.
Efficiency made did a
Yeah.
great job of that.
So making sure that it was kind of clear, I think that might be a good way to promote it, so we talk about, you know, some people who maybe some of us is out of reach financially,
Right.
if it's something in that flyer we hand out the farmer's market or whatever, it's like, you can, you know, learn about how these things are
They
more
can get
affordable.
rebates.
I'm sure a lot of that would be incorporated in what the vendors would be talking about, but making sure that's included. I do agree that, you know, getting ready for April probably wouldn't work, but Earth Day might be one of those times at least that might work in terms of
Yeah.
something associated with that kind of time period.
Right.
People thinking about it.
Unless there's anything else, let's move to C, to our energy audit on our agenda.
So I really have given you the update on this, that we have, we've received it. We will be providing it via email after this meeting, and that it would be part of the first advisory.
Good, I'm looking forward to seeing it. And the last thing on our agenda is public comment. This can be a short meeting there, folks. Public comment, anybody have any? We don't really have any public people to comment. Good, and if there's not anything else, anybody have anything else they wanna?
Yeah, November is the date.
November.
So we did ours, yeah, we did ours late.
We did our what, late?
The
Sorry, yeah, the
audit?
energy efficiency
Yeah.
fair.
Oh, okay.
I thought it probably was in that time frame because the, just because of when the AmeriCorps volunteer arrives and how they have,
So, yeah.
what kind of timeline they have in order to get something pulled off.
Right, yeah. I do like the connection to Earth Day. I wish it's just too early for us to even think about getting it up and running. It's April. We need 4 months.
Yeah, but maybe next year.
Maybe next year, right? Following year, yeah. Okay, well then, I guess we can adjourn. We don't really need a motion. We can vote if you want. Adjourn.
Second.
I
Second.
vote yay.
All right.
Sure.
Thank you. So this committee we will start to morph into advisory. This is gonna go, we do not have a meeting scheduled for next month. Yeah, we do. February's pre-budget.
Right, but we'll send out a doodle to find out what works
Okay.
best for a pre-budget.
Okay, does that sound good? Yes?
Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. All right. Have a good night, guys.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Always, thank you.